As of the morning of April 14, 2026, the United States Department of Defense has confirmed a massive naval realignment in the Middle East, signaling a transition from passive deterrence to active maritime interdiction. Following a directive that went into effect on April 13, approximately 15 American warships have established a multi-layered blockade perimeter around the Strait of Hormuz and its adjacent waters. This deployment represents the most significant concentration of Western naval power in the region since the 1980s tanker war. The backbone of this operation, designated by CENTCOM as a security stabilization mission, is the USS Abraham Lincoln CVN-72 Carrier Strike Group. The Lincoln, a Nimitz-class nuclear-powered supercarrier, serves as the primary command and control hub, carrying a modernized air wing of F-35C Lightning IIs and FA-18EF Super Hornets. However, the tactical heavy lifting is being performed by 11 Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers. These vessels, each a 9,000-ton platform equipped with the Aegis combat system, are distributed strategically from the Gulf of Oman into the northern Arabian Sea. Supporting the destroyers is a formidable amphibious task force designed for visit, board, search, and seizure (VBSS) operations. This includes the USS Tripoli, LHA-7, a massive America-class amphibious assault ship, the USS New Orleans, LPD-18, a San Antonio-class transport dock, and the USS Rushmore, LSD-47, a Whidbey Island-class dock landing ship. Together, these vessels provide the inner layer of the blockade, housing hundreds of specialized Marines and special operations teams capable of heliborne or waterborne boarding of commercial vessels suspected of violating international sanctions or carrying illicit Iranian petroleum. Perhaps the most telling factual detail of this deployment is the transit route of the USS George H.W. Bush, CVN-77, Carrier Strike Group. Intelligence reports and satellite imagery confirm that the Bush Strike Group is currently rounding the southern tip of Africa, the Cape of Good Hope, rather than utilizing the Suez Canal and the Red Sea. This 3,500-mile detour is a deliberate tactical choice. By avoiding the Bab al-Mandeb Strait, Washington is acknowledging the persistent threat posed by Houthi anti-ship ballistic missiles, ASBMs, and suicide drone swarms. As one senior Pentagon official stated, "We are not in the business of trading $1 billion air defense inventory for $5,000 drones, while our primary strategic objective lies further east." This maneuver ensures that the incoming carrier group arrives at the Hormuz theater with its defensive magazines full and its hull intact. Meanwhile, the USS Gerald R. Ford, CVN-78, remains on station in the eastern Mediterranean, providing a rear-guard presence to deter any escalation from Hezbollah or other Levant-based proxies. Technically, the U.S. Navy has organized its forces into a concentric circle doctrine. The USS Abraham Lincoln utilizes E-2D advanced Hawkeye aircraft to maintain a 24/7 radar picture of the entire Persian Gulf, ensuring no Iranian vessel or aircraft can move undetected. The 11 Arleigh Burke destroyers provide a shield of SM-2, SM-3, and SM-6 interceptors. Their Mk-41 vertical launch systems, VLS, are also loaded with Tomahawk land attack missiles, TLAMs, aimed directly at Iranian coastal battery sites. The USS Tripoli, and its accompanying amphibious ships manage the humanitarian inspection zones. This is where the physical blockade occurs. Cargo ships are intercepted, their manifests verified, and their hulls inspected for unauthorized energy exports. Washington maintains that this is not a declaration of war, but a maritime enforcement action. However, the physical reality on the water suggests a full-scale economic strangulation of the Iranian state. From the perspective of strategic realism, the U.S. deployment of 15 warships to the Strait of Hormuz is not merely a reaction to regional instability. It is a calculated reassertion of American hegemony over the world's most vital energy artery. By controlling Hormuz, through which roughly 20% of the world's daily oil consumption passes, the United States is effectively seizing the global thermostat. For years, the U.S. posture toward Iran was one of extended deterrence, the hope that the threat force would prevent Iranian provocations. That era has ended. The shift to a physical blockade indicates that the Biden-Harris or subsequent administration has concluded that Iranian gray zone tactics, seizing tankers and using proxies, can only be stopped by a permanent, overwhelming physical presence. The strategy here is asymmetric dominance. Iran excels at using low-cost, high-impact tools, naval mines, speedboats, and drones. By pushing the blockade out into the Gulf of Oman and the Arabian Sea, the U.S. is fighting on its own terms. The blue water, where its superior radar and reach negate the advantages of Iran's swarming coastal tactics. The decision to route the USS George H.W. Bush around Africa is a profound admission of the changing nature of naval warfare. It proves that the cost-exchange ratio in the Red Sea has become unfavorable for high-value assets. In a realistic framework, this is tactical conservation for strategic concentration. The U.S. is willing to cede a degree of prestige in the Red Sea to ensure it wins the decisive battle for the Strait of Hormuz. This move signals to Tehran that the U.S. is preparing for a long-haul confrontation. A carrier group that takes the long way around is a carrier group that intends to stay for months, not weeks. It is a signal of endurance. Behind the curtain of maritime security lies a much larger game involving Beijing. China is the primary consumer of Iranian illicit oil. By establishing a 15-ship blockade, the U.S. is not just punishing Tehran, it is creating a chokehold on China's energy supply chain. In the realist view, this is a masterful, if dangerous, use of secondary deterrence. If China wishes to receive oil through Hormuz, it must now do so under the watchful eyes of American Arleigh Burke-class destroyers. This places Beijing in a dilemma: support Iran and risk a maritime confrontation with the U.S. Navy, or acquiesce to the blockade and see its energy security compromised. The primary danger of this multi-layered blockade is the incidental spark. With 15 warships in such proximity to Iranian territorial waters, the margin for error is razor-thin. Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, may attempt salami-slicing tactics, small, incremental provocations designed to test the U.S. rules of engagement, ROE. If an Iranian drone is shot down, or if a boarding party encounters armed resistance on a tanker, the escalatory ladder has no middle rungs. The U.S. has positioned its forces so aggressively that any response to an Iranian move must, by necessity, be overwhelming to ensure the safety of the fleet. While the U.S. controls the flow, it does not control the market's reaction. The mere presence of 15 warships at the world's most sensitive choke point has already sent Brent crude futures upward. For the U.S., the strategic gain of neutralizing Iran must be weighed against the domestic political cost of rising gasoline prices. However, from a realist perspective, Washington may view this as a necessary price for long-term structural stability. By removing Iran's ability to use the strait as a blackmail tool, the U.S. aims to eventually reach a state where the Iranian threat is permanently factored out of the global energy equation. Looking ahead, we should expect this blockade model to become the blueprint for future maritime flashpoints. Whether in the South China Sea or the Baltic, the U.S. is moving toward a doctrine of preemptive maritime containment. The goal is no longer to respond to a crisis, but to physically occupy the space where a crisis might occur, thereby dictating the outcome before the first shot is fired. The deployment of the USS Abraham Lincoln and its massive escort fleet is a clear message. The United States is willing to absorb the logistical and economic costs of a prolonged naval siege to maintain its role as the global guarantor of maritime order. Iran is now a prisoner of its own geography, and the world must prepare for a period of high-tension stability where the price of oil is dictated by the deck of a carrier. This is not a drill. This is the implementation of a maximum pressure 2.0 campaign, backed by kinetic reality rather than just diplomatic rhetoric. The noose is tight. The only question is who pulls the lever. This is Global Report. As the task force of 15 warships stabilizes its position within the blockade zone, the world is watching Tehran's next move. In the risky world of geopolitics, power is the only currency that never loses value. We will continue to monitor the heat signals and diplomatic cables as the situation unfolds. Stay updated, stay objective. This is Global Report.